I wasn't snooping, that's what I told myself, over and over again. I wasn't looking for secrets. I was looking for our travel documents. Our 10th anniversary was coming up, and Liam had planned a surprise trip. He told me we'd be going somewhere warm, sunny, and absolutely unforgettable. He wouldn't say more, just that I should pack light, bring my passport, and trust him. It was romantic. It was sweet. It was so perfectly Liam. I had gone into the home office to dig out our old travel gear. Sun hats, neck pillows, an ancient bottle of travel-size sunscreen that had probably expired 2 anniversaries ago. And while rummaging through the drawers, I found our passports tucked inside a black leather folder. It wasn't hidden, just slipped between some old envelopes and a stack of tax documents. I pulled them out, humming to myself, thinking maybe I'd get a clue from the visas inside. Maybe he'd accidentally left a boarding pass tucked in the sleeve. That's when I saw it. His passport had a stamp, a bright blue rectangular mark, crisp and recent. I stared at it for a long moment, unsure why it made my stomach twist. I flipped to the page again. Then I read the date, the 14th of July. 3 weeks ago. I froze. We hadn't gone anywhere in July. Liam had been home. We'd had dinner on the couch, watching reruns of The Office. He'd been stressed about work, taking late-night Zoom calls. I remembered everything about that week, how he kissed my forehead one morning and said, "Next month, we'll get away from all this." But he had gotten away. Without me. I squinted at the stamp. Santorini. Greece. Greece? He hated flying. He got anxious on planes. And he'd never expressed any interest in the Mediterranean. Ever. In fact, last year when I suggested a Greek island for vacation, he said, "Too touristy. Not our vibe." I stared at the ink on the page, as if it might disappear if I blinked hard enough. But it stayed there. Bright. Clear. Undeniable. I flipped through the rest of his passport. No other new stamps. No extra pages tucked inside. No ticket stubs. But I noticed the back flap bulge slightly. There was something beneath the fabric, barely peeking out. I pulled gently, and a corner of paper came loose. It was a receipt. Hotel Perivolos, Santorini. Check-in, the 14th of July. Check-out, the 19th of July. Room, double suite, sea view. 2 guests. I sank into the chair. My pulse was ringing in my ears. I tried to remember anything odd from that week. Had he been gone? Had he said something? Lied about a meeting? But it didn't make sense he'd been around. I would have noticed 5 days of absence. Wouldn't I? I told myself, maybe it was work-related. Maybe it was a business trip. Maybe the room was just labeled double, and he stayed alone. But deep down, I knew. I knew because Liam wasn't sloppy. He was meticulous, methodical. He didn't forget to hide things. If this folder was in my hands, it meant I wasn't supposed to find it. It wasn't meant to be discovered. I held the passport like it was something dirty, foreign. It felt like it belonged to someone else. Then I looked down and saw something scrawled in pen on the hotel receipt, a scribbled note at the bottom, in Liam's handwriting. I knew it instantly, the slight leftward slant, the way he looped his L's. It said, "Next time, September." I felt my chest tighten. My vision tunneled. There was going to be a next time. I put everything back exactly how I found it. The folder, the passport, the receipt. I wiped my fingerprints from the leather, though I wasn't sure why. Maybe part of me still wanted to pretend none of it was real. But as I stood there in the silence of our home office, one thing rang louder than everything else. This wasn't a one-time mistake. This wasn't a moment of weakness. This was planned, scheduled, rehearsed. And I had no idea who Liam really was anymore. People used to say we were that couple, the ones who just worked. Not in a performative social media kind of way, but in that quiet, dependable, boringly stable sense that made others feel both comforted and a little envious. Liam and I met when we were both 28. I was working as a freelance book editor, living paycheck to paycheck, deeply cynical about romance. He was an IT consultant with a calm demeanor and eyes that always looked like they were hiding a private joke. We met at a mutual friend's birthday party. He spilled wine on my dress. I snapped at him. He apologized with a kind of sincerity that caught me off guard. 2 months later, we moved in together. A year after that, we were married. We didn't fight much, not because we were perfect, but because we were compatible. He liked the big picture. I obsessed over details. He made the plans. I made them beautiful. We shared the same dry humor, the same distaste for loud parties, the same weird obsession with making sure the kitchen counters were always spotless before bed. For our first anniversary, he took me to a bed and breakfast in Vermont. It snowed the entire weekend and we barely left the room. I remember looking at him, brushing snow off his jacket and thinking, this is it. This is my person. Over the years, our lives filled with the kinds of small, happy rituals that make a marriage feel more like a private language. He always brought me coffee in bed on Sundays. I always made his favorite pasta on the last Friday of every month. We had our own shorthand for things. Go bag meant we were fed up and needed to escape the city. Storm mode meant no visitors, no talking, just blankets and old movies. I knew his schedule. He knew mine. We had passwords to each other's streaming accounts, shared an Amazon login, and always agreed to text when we arrived somewhere safely. I don't remember when I stopped checking his phone. Maybe after the third year. Maybe after I realized he never gave me a reason to. He was thoughtful, quiet, but never absent. The kind of man who'd notice if I was wearing new earrings and ask about them. The kind of man who always opened the car door for me, even after a decade. We never had kids. Not because we didn't want them, but because we kept putting it off. Careers got busy, money was tight, then we just stopped talking about it. Some people said that was a red flag, that couples without kids drift apart. But not us. Or so I thought. Looking back now, I can see how we became something else. Something polished, a little too curated. We didn't drift. Exactly, we just settled. Into patterns. Into a routine that looked beautiful from the outside, but was slowly hollowing out from within. But at the time, I didn't feel any of that. When Liam suggested a surprise trip for our 10th anniversary, I was thrilled. He wasn't usually spontaneous. That was always my domain. So when he said, let me plan this one, just trust me, I did, without question, without suspicion, without a flicker of doubt. I even bragged to my sister about it. He's planning everything, I'd said, grinning over coffee. All I have to do is pack a swimsuit and show up. She smiled, but there was something in her eyes I didn't catch then. Something tight, hesitant. She said, that's sweet. I guess 10 years really does make a difference. Now I wonder what she saw that I didn't. In the weeks leading up to the trip, Liam was unusually affectionate. Not in a performative way, but in that trying too hard to be normal kind of way that only makes sense in hindsight. He brought home flowers for no reason, cleaned out the garage, made a Spotify playlist titled For Her, which I found oddly generic, like it could have been made for anyone. I didn't question it. I told myself, this is what 10 years looks like. This is what effort feels like. I didn't see it as guilt. I saw it as love. On the surface, everything looked perfect. We still went grocery shopping together on Saturdays, still folded laundry while watching documentaries, still laughed at inside jokes that no one else understood. But now, I realize perfection can be the most effective disguise. Because when everything looks right, you stop asking questions. You stop paying attention to the silences between the words. And that's when the lies can breathe. I remember one night, 2 weeks before the trip, I woke up and found Liam sitting in the living room with his laptop. The glow lit up his face, and he didn't see me standing there. He was staring at something on the screen, some photo or message I couldn't tell. When he noticed me, he quickly closed the laptop and smiled. Couldn't sleep, he said, just checking work emails. It was 2:47 a.m. I nodded, kissed his head, and went back to bed. I didn't question him, because we were that couple, because we had rituals, because I believed in the version of us we had built so carefully over 10 years, because I never thought I'd find a passport stamp that didn't have me in it. They say hindsight is 20/20. I say hindsight is cruel, because now everything makes sense in a way I wish it didn't. The late night showers, the new cologne I never bought him, the increasing client dinners that seemed to always fall on Fridays, the night we used to make pasta and open wine and talk about our week. I told myself we were busy. I told myself this was adulthood, that after 10 years, these things just happened. That was the lie I told myself. The ones he told me were quieter, more deliberate, carefully packaged in sighs and shrugs and vague answers that never triggered alarms, just discomfort I couldn't name. I remember one night, maybe a month before I found the passport stamp, we were brushing our teeth side by side. He turned to me mid-rinse and asked, "Do you ever think about how different things would be if we hadn't gotten married?" It wasn't the question that hurt. It was the way he asked it casually, like he was testing the temperature of something, like he'd already thought about it more than once. I laughed. "No," I said. "Do you?" He just smiled. "Nah, just a thought." But the smile didn't reach his eyes. Another time, I found a pair of sunglasses in the car, designer ones, the kind I knew he wouldn't buy for himself. They were too sleek, too feminine. I held them up, half joking. "Whose are these?" He didn't even flinch. "Probably your sister's." "Didn't she borrow the car last weekend?" "She hadn't." I could have checked. Could have texted her right then. But I didn't. Because to check would be to not trust. And I trusted him. Didn't I? There were messages, too. Brief, cryptic ones on his phone screen before he swiped them away. Names I didn't recognize. Emojis I never saw him use with me. Once, I caught the tail end of a message that read, "Just thinking about you still." I asked who it was. He said it was a work friend going through a breakup. "She's a mess," he said, rolling his eyes. "I'm trying to help her not spiral." I nodded. I wanted to believe him. I chose to believe him. Even when he started locking his phone. Even when he started sleeping with it under his pillow. Even when he started pulling away when I reached for it. And the absences, they crept in so slowly I didn't even notice until they became normal. Like the way he stopped asking me how my day was, or how he'd slip into bed after midnight and claim he lost track of time, or how he stopped hugging me from behind while I cooked, something he used to do almost unconsciously. There was a weekend trip to a tech conference in D.C. He didn't invite me, said it was just him and the guys from work. When he came back, his skin was slightly sunburned. I teased him. "Bit sunny for a conference, huh?" He grinned. "We took a detour to a rooftop bar. Can't hide anything from you, huh?" I laughed, but something in my chest tightened. I told myself he deserved space, that he wasn't cheating, just tired, just stressed, just aging into a quieter version of the man I married. When he started going to the gym more often, I was proud of him, told myself it was self-care. He said he wanted to be in better shape for our trip. But then I noticed a different kind of muscle, forming emotional distance, the kind that happens when someone's already halfway gone. There were also smells, not perfume exactly, but something. Shampoo I didn't own, fabric softener I didn't use, a kind of unfamiliar femininity that clung faintly to the collar of his shirts, the passenger seat of his car. I confronted him once, gently. "You've been different lately." He kissed my forehead. "So have you," he said. It wasn't an answer. It was a mirror. I think the worst part wasn't the lies. It was how easy they were to believe. Because I didn't want to be that woman, the one who checks her husband's phone, who doubts every smile, who becomes a paranoid shadow of herself. I prided myself on being better than that, on being evolved, on being the kind of wife who gives space. But now I see what I really was, a willing participant in my own gaslighting. I ignored every late night, every vague excuse, every gut feeling. I wanted to protect the version of us that existed in my head, the version where we were still partners, still that couple, still worth rooting for. I even remember, with sickening clarity, the night I found a message on his laptop left open by mistake. It was from someone saved only as V. That view from the hotel still makes me smile. Counting down to the next escape, I stared at it, heart thudding. He came into the room moments later, and I clicked away from the screen like a guilty teenager. "Everything okay?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. "Just checking my email." I didn't mention the message. I didn't ask about the name. I didn't say anything. Because in that moment, I still wasn't ready to know. I wasn't ready to admit that the cracks weren't new, they'd been spidering under the surface for years. I just hadn't looked close enough. Or maybe I had. Maybe I'd seen every one of them. and just chosen to keep my eyes shut. The night I decided to look through his files wasn't some dramatic breaking point. There was no screaming fight, no slammed doors, no final straw, just silence. That dangerous kind of silence that fills a house when trust has been replaced by suspicion, and neither person wants to be the first to name it. Liam had left his laptop open again. He was in the shower, humming some upbeat tune I didn't recognize. Too cheerful for someone carrying secrets. I stared at the screen for a long time before touching it. The document tab was still open, blinking softly like it was inviting me in. It was titled Santorini. My hand hovered over the mouse. I knew the rules, the unspoken boundaries of marriage, but something had already shifted. He had crossed a line, I just hadn't decided how far I'd follow him across it. Click. The file opened into a folder. Inside were subfolders, labeled, organized, color-coded. He had a whole system. One called Itinerary, another Receipts, a third Photos, V. That last one made my blood run cold. I clicked on Itinerary first. A spreadsheet, neatly laid out by date, time, and location. Flights booked from Newark to Athens. A private boat transfer to Santorini. Restaurant reservations for two. A couple's massage at sunset. A wine tour along the cliffs. Every detail choreographed like a honeymoon, but not with me. I opened the receipts folder. There were invoices from hotels, booking confirmations from restaurants, credit card screenshots, even notes about tipping staff. And every booking listed 2 guests. Not once did he try to hide it. It wasn't buried. It was filed, maintained, preserved, as if he was proud of it. I scrolled through the receipts, my breath catching every time I saw the line. 2 guests, 1 room, king bed. Then, with trembling fingers, I clicked on Photos, V, and there she was, Vanessa. It wasn't labeled, but I knew. She was younger than I expected, late 20s maybe, tall, sun-kissed, with a kind of easy beauty that didn't need filters. In the photos, she was laughing, lounging in a chair in a white dress, holding a glass of wine, wrapping her arms around my husband's neck while he kissed her cheek. He looked so relaxed, so happy, so present. There was one photo that gutted me more than the rest. They were sitting on a stone ledge, the Aegean Sea behind them, sunset glowing gold on their skin. Her head was on his shoulder. He had his hand on her thigh. The caption below read, "This moment is everything." I felt sick. I looked around the room, as if expecting the walls to collapse. The air felt too tight, too heavy. I wanted to scream but couldn't even find my voice. Instead, I kept scrolling. There were videos too. One of them clinking glasses and saying, "To freedom." Another where Liam was dancing. Actually dancing. The way he never did with me. His arms around her waist, eyes closed, mouthing lyrics to a song I didn't recognize. I kept expecting to see guilt on his face. Hesitation. Something. But he looked alive. Lit up. As if he'd escaped something dark and suffocating. Had that something been me? I don't know how long I sat there. Minutes? Hours? By the time I heard the bathroom door open, I had already emailed the entire folder to myself. Not for revenge. Not to use against him. Just to make sure I wasn't crazy. That this wasn't some elaborate dream. That I wouldn't wake up and tell myself you imagined all of it. He came out in a towel, wiping his hair. "You okay?" he asked, noticing the laptop in my lap. "Yeah," I said, voice steady. "Just checking something." He didn't press. He just smiled and walked past me, humming again. Later that night, as he fell asleep beside me, I stared at the ceiling and realized something awful. He trusted me not to look. That's how confident he was in his disguise. That's how untouchable he thought this version of himself was. But the folder told a different story. There was one last file I hadn't opened. It was a PDF titled Agreement. At first, I thought it might be a hotel policy or a travel waiver, but when I opened it, my stomach dropped. It was a prenup draft. Not our prenup, we never had one. This was new. The header had both of their names, Liam S. Thompson and Vanessa G. Lang. It outlined asset separation, property distribution, future income protection. It was detailed, precise, too precise for something hypothetical. It was dated the 10th of August, our wedding anniversary. He was drawing up legal documents with another woman on our anniversary. That's when I knew this wasn't an affair. It wasn't a fling. It was a life shift, a rehearsal, a version of his future where I no longer existed. I slammed the laptop shut. My hands were shaking. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just sat there in the dark and listened to the sound of his breathing. Steady, peaceful. He was sleeping beside me, unaware that his entire lie had unraveled in a matter of minutes. I wanted to wake him, shake him, ask why, ask how long. But I already knew the answer. Long enough to organize it into folders. I couldn't sleep that night. I lay beside Liam, eyes wide open in the dark, every second stretching like an hour. Every time I blinked, her face flashed behind my eyelids. Not just from the photos, from somewhere else. Somewhere older, deeper. There was something about her. Something I couldn't shake. The next morning, I waited until Liam left for work. He kissed my cheek, told me to pack a sundress or two, said we'd be leaving for the anniversary trip in 2 days. I nodded, smiling like everything was fine. Then I opened my laptop. I went straight to the folder, opened the photos of her again, studied every curve of her face, the sharp line of her jaw, the dimple on her left cheek when she laughed, the faint scar near her eyebrow. And that's when it clicked. The scar. I'd seen it before. A dinner party, 4 years ago, hosted at our house. Liam's company had just landed a new client, and we were celebrating. Small gathering, mostly coworkers, some plus ones. There was a woman there, tall, striking, with a sharp laugh that had cut across the room like a blade. She'd sat too close to Liam at dinner, touched his arm a little too casually. I remember feeling something sour in my stomach that night, brushing it off as jealousy. When I asked who she was, Liam said, "That's Vanessa. She's new on the team. Just moved back from Seattle." I hadn't thought of her since. Until now. I searched my photo archives, scanned through old images until I found one labeled Company Dinner, June 2021. There she was, in the background, laughing, drink in hand, looking straight at Liam. Same dimple, same scar. Same woman. So this wasn't some random affair. This wasn't a sudden, accidental connection. This had been simmering for years. I zoomed in on the image, studied the way her body angled toward him, the way he leaned in slightly, subtle, intimate. I went through my calendar. That month, Liam had started working late more often. There were more client dinners, more last-minute meetings. I remember because it was the summer my father was sick, and Liam had missed one of our visits to the hospital. He'd said, "I can't leave early today. Vanessa needs me to help prep for a presentation." I remember feeling guilty for even being annoyed. Now I understood. This wasn't just betrayal. This was betrayal with history. I kept digging. Found LinkedIn. There she was. Vanessa Grace Lang, marketing strategist. Previously employed at 2 agencies in Seattle. Joined Liam's company in 2021. But there was something more. Something that sent a chill down my spine. Hair profile photo. She was wearing a necklace. A thin silver chain with a small pendant barely noticeable unless you knew what to look for. I knew it, because I had one just like it. Liam had given it to me on our 5th anniversary. He said it was unique, that he'd had it made specially just for me. Was it a coincidence, a replica? Or worse, had he given her the same gift? I needed to know. I searched the house, opened his drawers, checked his nightstand, the top shelf of the closet where he kept things he didn't want me to see. I found another box, velvet, small. Inside, a necklace, identical to mine, still in the packaging, with a note, "September will be here before we know it. Can't wait to give you this in person." My throat burned. I was going to be in Santorini with him for our anniversary. He had planned another trip with her the following month. A different anniversary, one I didn't belong to. I sat on the floor, necklace in one hand, note in the other, and realized I had been living inside a carefully constructed illusion. Every moment I thought was ours had been shared, replicated, paralleled. And now the face in the photos wasn't just a stranger. It was someone who had smiled at me in my own home, drank wine from my glasses, Saturday on my couch, looked me in the eye, and thanked me for the dinner. She knew. All along, she knew. I didn't know what hurt more, the betrayal, or the fact that I had shaken her hand. I went to the bathroom, stared at myself in the mirror. My reflection looked off older, smaller, as if the betrayal had reached through the screen and peeled something away from me. And still, part of me wanted to find an explanation, something that would make it less deliberate, less cruel. So I messaged one of Liam's coworkers, discreetly, someone I'd met at the same dinner, someone who always seemed kind. "Hey, random question. Whatever happened to Vanessa from the marketing team?" She replied within minutes. "Vanessa? She left last year. Didn't Liam tell you? She moved to Europe, got a remote contract somewhere. Haven't seen her in ages." I stared at the message. She'd moved to Europe. Then how was she at dinner with Liam this summer? I opened the metadata on the Santorini photos. The timestamp said July 2024. But the photos of her face, her hair, her clothes, something didn't add up. I cross-referenced one of the images with a photo from her Instagram, still public. The outfit she wore in one of the Santorini pictures, she'd posted it over a year ago, tagged in Barcelona. The photos were old, but the receipts were new. The hotel bookings were dated this July, so if she wasn't with him this time, who was? Who did he really take? Why were the photos of Vanessa reused? Was it her again, hiding her online presence? Or was it someone else? A chill ran down my spine as the realization hit me. The files were fake, or at least constructed, edited, cropped. He was hiding something deeper than just an affair. He wasn't just living a double life. He was rewriting it. The woman Liam married wouldn't have done any of this. She wouldn't have broken into his files. She wouldn't have traced metadata, checked social posts, analyzed timestamps, or interrogated his colleagues through casual text messages laced with poison. She wouldn't have memorized the scar above another woman's eyebrow or felt adrenaline spike when seeing a duplicate necklace in a drawer. But that version of me was gone now, and something colder had taken her place. It wasn't rage, not yet. Rage is noisy, clumsy, explosive. What I felt was sharper, a kind of mathematical clarity, a narrowing of thought, a recalibration of self. I was no longer someone reacting to betrayal. I was someone studying it. And I was done asking questions. I wanted answers. Real ones. So I started building a case. I knew Liam's routines, his passwords, his digital footprints. We'd shared everything for years. That included access unspoken but granted. He'd never changed the recovery email for his old accounts, never updated his cloud storage info from the early years. So I logged in, and what I found didn't surprise me. It confirmed everything. There were hidden folders beyond the Santorini set, labels like Lisbon, March, Copenhagen, Winter, Private Moments. At least 3 different women appeared across these photos and documents. Some faces repeated, some didn't. All beautiful, all different from me. He hadn't just betrayed me once, or twice. He'd made a habit of it, an art form. I downloaded everything, backed it up on 3 separate encrypted drives. Not because I planned to destroy him, not yet. I just needed to see it all, to know how far the rot had spread. Then I started removing myself, quietly, strategically. I opened a new checking account in a name I hadn't used since college, my maiden name, transferred small amounts from our joint savings. Nothing noticeable, nothing that would trigger alerts. I contacted an attorney, a quiet woman named Lorraine who didn't flinch when I said, "I'm not ready to file yet. I just want to know what I'm entitled to if I do." She nodded, like she'd heard that 1,000 times before. I rerouted my mail, backed up my phone, removed my Face ID from all our shared devices, changed the locks on the storage unit where I kept my most personal items, journals, photo albums, the only remaining letters from my father before he passed. I was building a wall between who I used to be and who I was becoming. Liam didn't notice. He was too wrapped in the illusion, too confident that the woman he married would never leave, would never look too closely, would never fight back. Every night, He'd climb into bed beside me, kiss my shoulder, and murmur something about Santorini. "You're gonna love it," he said. "I picked a place with a view just for you." I smiled, nodded, slid closer even. Played the part so well, I scared myself. I even started packing. Folded sundresses, picked out swimsuits, placed sunscreen in our luggage like I hadn't already seen her wearing the exact same shade on the cliffs of Greece. This wasn't submission. It was surveillance. I was no longer the wife in the story. I was the witness. And I had one final move to make before it was checkmate. I set a meeting with Vanessa. It wasn't hard. Her contact info was still listed under an old agency she freelanced for. I emailed from a burner account, "Urgent. Regarding Liam Thompson. Please meet." I didn't expect a reply. She wrote back within an hour. We met at a cafe on the east side, neutral territory. She arrived wearing sunglasses, casual, like someone already familiar with the taste of secrets. "I wondered when you'd reach out," she said, removing her glasses. So she had known. "How long?" I asked. She shrugged. "Depends on what you mean by known. Known he was married? Always. Known he was lying to both of us? About 2 months." I stared. "Both of us?" She nodded. "I thought I was the exception. Turns out I was just the rehearsal." She reached into her purse and pulled out a flash drive, slid it across the table. "I figured you'd want a copy. There are things on here he never meant you to see." I didn't touch it yet. "Why help me now?" She took a breath. "Because I'm tired of pretending I'm not complicit. Because I believed him too. Until I didn't." We didn't speak after that. We didn't need to. I left the cafe and drove home, the flash drive burning a hole in my pocket. That night, I slid into bed beside Liam again, watched his chest rise and fall, watched his mouth twitch slightly in sleep, and I realized something chilling. He didn't know me anymore. He still thought I was that woman, the one who'd never dig, never push, never unravel the fiction he'd spent years constructing. He didn't see what I'd become. And that was his mistake. Because now, I had the truth. And I wasn't going to be quiet about it forever. I chose a Tuesday. Not for any symbolic reason, no poetic dates, no anniversaries, no milestone to mark it. Just an ordinary day that would blur into the calendar and leave no obvious scar. That's what I wanted. A clean cut, no confrontation, no final plea, no shouting match or broken glass, just silence. I woke up before him, like always. It used to be one of my favorite parts of the day, watching Liam sleep. His mouth slightly open, one arm thrown over the pillow like he was reaching for me in dreams. Now it made my stomach turn. I didn't leave a letter. That felt too dramatic. Instead, I left evidence. I printed the photos. All of them. The hotel receipts. The emails. The prenup draft with her name and his signature. The flash drive from Vanessa. I placed everything in a manila envelope and slid it under his coffee mug on the kitchen counter, like it was just another bill to pay. I didn't leave a note. He didn't need one. My bags were already packed. I'd been packing slowly over the past week, slipping items into a suitcase that stayed in the trunk of my car. Clothes, laptop, chargers, passport, the essentials. Everything else could rot in that house. I checked my phone. No missed calls, no new texts. Liam had a morning meeting downtown. He'd be gone for at least 2 hours. I had just enough time to disappear. I walked through the house like a stranger, noticed things I hadn't in years. The chip in the tile by the fridge, the photo of us in Paris that was slightly tilted, the coffee stain on the hallway carpet we never got around to cleaning. Our life, in fragments. I paused at the bedroom door one last time, his side of the bed still warm, the sheets still tangled from the night before. We had made love that night. That was the cruelest part of all. He'd kissed me like nothing was wrong, touched me like I was still his, whispered, "You're everything to me," as if the words meant anything. And I had let him, because I needed one last reminder of how far I'd allowed myself to fall. Now, as I stepped outside, the sun barely over the horizon, I didn't cry. I didn't hesitate. I locked the door behind me. Then I disabled our joint bank cards, transferred the final amount to my new account, shut down the shared calendar. logged out of every streaming service we used together. I said myself. By the time Liam returned home, I would be gone. By the time he opened the envelope, I would be on a flight. Not to Santorini, to anywhere else, to somewhere he'd never been, somewhere that didn't smell like betrayal. I drove for 2 hours in silence, no music, no calls. My sister's apartment waited for me. She had offered her spare room without asking a single question. She didn't need to. She saw it in my eyes weeks ago. That look of someone drowning just beneath the surface. When I arrived, I parked outside her building and looked at myself in the mirror. He looked calm. Not free, not yet, but awake. Alive. I carried my suitcase up 3 flights of stairs. She opened the door before I knocked. Said nothing. Just wrapped her arms around me and held on tight. For the first time in a long time, I allowed myself to exhale. That night, I slept in a bed that didn't know his shape. The silence didn't ache. It soothed. No more pretending. No more versions of myself curated for his approval. I didn't feel brave. I didn't feel powerful. I just felt done. And sometimes, done is enough. He didn't call right away. That surprised me. For a man so obsessed with control, so meticulous in planning every detail of his double life, I thought his first reaction would be swift, explosive, desperate. But Liam was quiet. For 2 days, nothing. Then the texts began. Liam, we need to talk. Liam, please. Just one call. Liam, this isn't what you think. Liam, you left without even giving me a chance. I ignored all of them, but I read every word. Then came the email. A carefully crafted essay of guilt, nostalgia, and subtle deflection. He called it Our Story. The subject line, I owe you the truth. He wrote about our first date, how he remembered the dress I wore, the way I rolled my eyes when he tripped over his words. He talked about our wedding, our shared dreams, the mornings we made coffee together and argued over nothing. He reminded me of everything that had been real. Then he pivoted. He said he had made mistakes, but that they came from a place of confusion, that he'd been lost, unsure of himself, craving something new after years of feeling invisible. He never used the word affair. He never named Vanessa. He referred to it all as a lapse in judgment, a distraction, a moment of weakness that spiraled. He told me he was in therapy now, that he wanted to do the work, that he believed our marriage was still salvageable. He ended the email with, I still choose you. I hope you'll choose me back. I stared at the screen for a long time. He had spent years choosing other women, choosing lies, choosing himself. Now, when it was convenient, he wanted to choose me. But more than that, he wanted to rewrite the story, paint himself as the man who stumbled, not the one who calculated. Frame our collapse as a misunderstanding, not a betrayal. Smooth out the jagged edges with language soft enough to sound like love. I didn't reply, not because I didn't have words, but because he didn't deserve them. So he showed up, not at my sister's. He was too smart for that. He knew I wouldn't want a scene. He went to my office instead. Saturday in the lobby, like some lost husband from a bad television drama, holding a coffee and a folder, like we were still just going through something. My coworker called me. There's a man here, she whispered. He says he's your husband. Do you want me to call security? I walked to the front slowly. My heart didn't race. My hands didn't shake. He looked smaller than I remembered. His eyes were red. His shirt wrinkled. The same man who once color-coded our vacation wardrobes was now slumped in a chair, looking like someone halfway through a nervous breakdown. I nodded to my coworker. It's okay. I'll talk to him outside. We stood on the sidewalk, in silence for a moment. Then he said, You just left. I did, I said. You didn't even let me explain. I met his gaze. I didn't need to. You explained everything already, in folders. He flinched. That wasn't... I didn't mean for you to find... That's the point, Liam. You didn't mean for me to find out. But you still did it. He stepped closer. It wasn't real. It was a fantasy. I was trying to escape something that... Me? I cut in. You were escaping me? No, he said quickly. Not you. Us. The routine, the predictability. I almost laughed. So your solution was to create another routine? Another woman? A new necklace? New destinations? You didn't escape anything. You just repeated it somewhere else. His jaw tightened. I made a mistake, he said again. You made a map, I replied coldly. A calendar. A contract. That's not a mistake, Liam. That's a decision. He looked away. I let the silence sit between us for a while. Finally, he whispered, Do you still love me? That question. That awful, broken question. There was a time I would have answered before he finished asking. A time when the word yes lived at the tip of my tongue, no matter how angry or hurt I was. But now, I love the man I thought you were, I said. I don't know this one. He nodded. A small, defeated movement. I just wanted more, he muttered. I thought I could have both. You can't, I said. And now you have neither. He didn't cry. He just stood there, shoulders heavy, eyes dull. I'm sorry, he said. I know, I replied. And I walked away. Not because I was strong, not because I was over it, but because I refused to let him write the ending. This was my story now, and I was taking the pen back. They say closure is a quiet thing, a whispered goodbye, a final tear, a symbolic box of memories set ablaze, something soft, clean, cinematic. But that's a lie. Closure, for me, came in waves, sharp, loud, and completely unpredictable. It didn't arrive wrapped in peace. It came with questions that couldn't be answered, truths that kept shifting, and a rage that never quite knew where to land. The day after Liam and I spoke outside my office, I thought it would all start to settle. Instead, it got worse. He sent flowers, then a handwritten letter, then a video message. The letter was filled with phrases like unconditional love, the woman I still believe in, and a future we can still rebuild. The video was worse. It was shot in our kitchen, my kitchen, his voice trembling, eyes puffy. He walked through each room, narrating memories like he was hosting a documentary of our love life. This is where we danced that night after the blackout. This couch, where we watched The Handmaid's Tale and cried together. This hallway, where we used to kiss goodnight without saying a word. It was manipulative, painfully, expertly manipulative. And a part of me hated that it still made something in my chest ache. Because he wasn't wrong. Those moments were real. But the man replaying them now had used those same memories as cover fire for deception. That's when I decided I needed to respond. Not for him, for me. So I wrote back. Not a letter, not a message, a document. I titled it, The Truth You Refused to Tell Yourself. It was 10 pages long. Page 1. A list of the lies I had uncovered, with timestamps, screenshots, and quotes. Page 2. A list of the women, the cities, the dates. Page 3. The bank transfers. Page 4. The necklace proof. It was not unique, just another recycled lie. Page 5. Vanessa's statement. Page 6 through 9. My own narrative, my pain, my disgust, my clarity. Page 10. A single line. This is what closure looks like when you earn it. I sent it. Then I blocked his number. All of them. Email, social, banking apps. I even changed my Spotify account because he used to share playlists with me through song titles. That night, I dreamt of fire. Not destruction, not revenge, just something warm, consuming, final. The next morning, I woke up and realized I hadn't checked his messages. Not even out of curiosity. That was the beginning. Not of forgiveness, but of indifference. Real closure isn't quiet. It's loud inside your chest until it's not. It screams until your body stops reacting. It burns everything down until you don't flinch at the ashes. It's walking past the bakery you used to visit together and not remembering what he ordered. It's hearing a song you once slow danced to and realizing the lyrics mean something entirely different now. It's telling the story without shaking. It's saying, I was lied to, manipulated, used, and not feeling embarrassed but powerful, because the shame isn't mine to carry anymore. The silence was, and I broke it. I never thought I'd be the kind of person who started over in her late 30s. Not because I didn't believe in fresh starts, but because I thought I already had mine. Liam was supposed to be it, the chapter where everything calmed, where the storm settled and I learned how to breathe, but he turned out to be the storm disguised as shelter. And I, so desperate for stability, called it love. Now, months later, my life is quieter. Not in the empty way. In the clear way. The kind of quiet that doesn't echo with regret or ache for explanation. Just space. Spaciousness in my chest, in my routines, in my future. I moved out of my sister's place 6 weeks ago. I found a small apartment with a north-facing window and floors that creak when I walk too fast. It's not beautiful. It's not curated. But it's mine. I filled it with things Liam would have found unnecessary. Mismatched pillows, used books, second-hand lamps with personality. I hung a calendar on the wall and filled it with my own plans: yoga, therapy, nights alone with cheap wine and long movies. I don't fill the weekends out of obligation anymore. I rest when I want. I move when I feel like it. I booked a solo trip for next spring. Not to Santorini. To Kyoto, a place I've dreamed of since college, but Liam always dismissed as too quiet for us. I want to see cherry blossoms fall without needing someone else to point them out. I want to get lost in a place where no one knows my name, where every turn is mine to choose. I started writing again. Not just emails or documents or scathing truth-telling manifestos. Real writing. Pages of memory. Imagination. Hope. It's messy. Raw. But it feels like blood returning to frozen limbs. Sometimes I still wake up reaching for a presence that isn't there. Not out of longing. Out of habit. That's the thing no one tells you about betrayal. It's not just about broken hearts. It's about broken reflexes. The way your body forgets it's allowed to exist without flinching, without shrinking. But each day, I remember more. I remember who I was before him, who I became with him, and now who I get to be without him. It turns out the most radical act of self-love wasn't walking away. It was staying away. Choosing not to chase closure. Choosing not to reopen wounds just because they've started to scar. Choosing to build a future where the only person I have to keep track of is me. He still emails sometimes. I don't read them. Not out of hatred, but because I've read this story already. And the ending? It's not with him. It's here. With me. Planning a life that finally includes myself at the center. Not the version he wanted. Not the one I tried to become. Just me.